All right, so I'm going to show you how to take a sample like this, chop it up, and make it your own. Okay, I mean, most people, when they want to sample, especially if you're just starting out, the first thing they're looking for is a loop. All right, and what I like to do is not look for loops, really. Look for something that just sounds good, because what I like to do is take samples from different sources or from the same track, whatever, and then just layer them and create something completely different. All right, so we're going to start off first with this sample right here. All right, let's listen to a bit of it. So you can hear it's the same loop over and over. Okay, now I'm not going to take the whole thing right there. It's 4 bars. I'm not going to take that. That's what most people would probably want to take. You know, and the other thing too is that when you're sampling, you have to remember is that, you know, most likely someone else has probably taken that sample. I mean, it's so hard to find something that no one else has taken yet. So, you know, you want to be different. You don't want to just take the same obvious loop that everyone else is going to take. So when you look at this waveform here, you have the loop right here. Okay, it just repeats basically the same thing here in this area here. It just brings in the bass. Same thing here. It's very, very loud. It's got more bass, more presence to it, and all that. I think there's a bit of pad in there. Let's check it out. Yeah, so that's really loud. And the thing is, when I'm trying to look for samples, I don't like to pick stuff like this that's very, very loud, because it's going to overwhelm the rest of the sounds in the loop that I'm going to make, in the beat that I'm going to make. So, you know, plus when you're adding drums and all that stuff, and of course if you're making a beat for a rapper, you want some space for the vocals as well. So what I'm going to try to do is focus on this area right here, and also this area a bit. So what I did was, just like a cooking show, I prepared everything ahead of time. So these are the samples, the chops I should say, that I created. All right, got this one, this one, this one, here. Okay, I'm going to take all this and remove it. I'm not going to work with that. All right, so we have just these parts here. So what I did was I just chopped it in some random places that I figured, you know, would be good to chop and all that. One trick is to take something like this. Okay, if you listen to this, just this part right here, let's check it out. So now that'll be good as a backdrop to your beat, okay? Because what I like to do is take this, okay, bring it to another track here, move it over, okay, we'll copy it a few times. All right, let's listen to it by itself. So it's not too bad. Actually, I'm gonna redo this part right here. Let's check it out. You gotta zoom in a bit because it's a little bit of space at the beginning there. All right, so let's bring it back to the beginning. All right, so let's take that. All right, let's check it out. Yeah, it sounds better. There's no gap at the beginning really. So now with just this would be a nice backdrop for your loop. And then what you could do is take other parts, let's say like maybe this part, and put it on top. It should sound okay because it's from the same track, right? I mean, you got this in the background. Plus you're going to put, you know, I want to put the volume lower. And let's see right here. Let's bring it down. Let's check it out. So that's just chilling in the background, very low. Okay, now if I put, let's say, this sample on top of it. So that's pretty good. So let's bring this down here. Okay, I'm going to fit this here. Let's check these out together. So that's pretty good. I mean, you got two parts that blend very well together. They're from the same track. And that'll work. I mean, I don't know if I'll keep it, but that could work. So, all right, so this part here is the same thing. So I'm just going to get rid of that and focus on this part right here. Okay, so if you listen to this part, that's pretty good. So I don't want to take the loud parts again, so let's shrink this in a bit. I could take this, put this right here. Let's check this out over top, the backdrop here. See, it clashes because it's the same part that I took from before. So let's just try this here. All right, so let's check this out. So I wouldn't use that all the way through as the loop because, you know, it's very repetitive and all that. So what you could do is take this, bring it in. Actually, I gotta snap this here. Where's the snap here? Yeah. All right. So now it clashes. This part here clashes with this part because this is the same as this, just that this part here has the base, right? So I could take just the tail end of this and put that as my backdrop. So we could try that as well. Let's zoom in here. And that's essentially what I'm doing here is I'm taking the tail end. Let's just try, let's just listen to it. Yeah, so let's say the tail end right here, okay? I'm taking that and I'm gonna make a track out of it. So let's put that here. Okay, I'm gonna duplicate this. All right, so let's just try this part here. This part is the tail end of this sample right here. And that's the thing, because sometimes you have a sample like this where it'll end right here, let's say. So you look up here, you're going to you're trying to fill out this whole bar here. So it's hard to do that when you have such a short sample. So even with this part here at the tail end, it may not fill all the way here. So I'll cut it off, put it somewhere else on a second track, and then let's listen to it here. So that gives it when you hear the clipping here. Let's just fix that part here. Just bring it in just slightly. Let's check it out. I think it's the end part here that clips. That's better. Okay, so let's duplicate this here. All right. Let's check it out. So now you can see it blends. It's just that there's a bit of a volume difference, but that's not a big deal right now. It's not a big focus. You could just bump this up a bit. Oops, a little too much. So now let's copy this one over to track two. Bar 2. This will be what I'm trying to do right here. To have just this part at the beginning of each bar. So I'm going to work with 4 bars. So let's do it at the beginning of each bar. So let's check it out. Now, doesn't that sound good? All right, we're getting somewhere with something there. And over here and over here. So, all right. So now we have, oops. Now we have our little 4-bar loop here. Let's check it out. That's pretty good. Now, that way, this one here that I originally did, I won't need that now. So let's just squash this down. Let's put it down here. Get rid of that. This part here, let's check it out again. See how it blends. Ooh, that's nice. That's nice. I like that because you don't really hear this one because it's overpowered by here. But I'll leave it in anyway because, you know, it's very low in volume compared to this. So, but it's this part here in between the two that you can really hear it. So let's check it out again. See, it's a little off there. It's a little off there. But what I could do is basically take, let's say if I take this out, let's check it out. Okay, that's pretty good. So what I could do is just move these around here. Bring it over like this. Let's check it out like this now. What I tend to do is usually in the 3rd bar or the 4th bar, I'll try to pitch something down You could go up a bit or whatever, but I prefer to pitch it down so you have either this or this, like maybe just the tail end, just this part here, I could just pitch it down. So just to give it some variation to let the listener know that, okay, this loop is at the end here, we're going to loop back again around. So what I have here is a drum track. I put together a little quick drum track. Let's just tighten it up here. All right, so let's just listen to the drums here. Just something simple. So let's listen to it with what I have here. But first, let me just take out this. Let me just loop this here. All right, let's listen to it looped with the drums. That's pretty good. So, you know, it does need some variation. Of course, you know, you can add other sounds to it. You know, for my style, usually I'll add something like some horns or whatever. Maybe I'll add some synths to it, like some maybe some Rhodes or some strings or whatever. So, all right. So for this one, let's try playing with the pitch, see what we can come up with, just to give it some sort of variation. Got this pitch shifter here. I'll bring it down. Let's say 2. All right. So let's start from bar 3. All right, sorry, it's the wrong one. Hold on a sec. I need to copy this to a new track. All right, right here. Okay, let's try this again. I'll bring this over to here, track 9, and then over here, I can get rid of that. Let's check it out. There you go. That sounds pretty good. Start from the beginning. There you go. That sounds pretty good. Now again, with this background part right here, all of this here, okay, track 9, it's a little loud on its own or whatever, but that's where effects will come in or whatever. Usually what I'll do is I'll add some kind of filter to it, high pass, low pass, whatever. Just something that blends in well with the original sample here, but not too low either. I don't want it to be too quiet because, again, like I said earlier, you know, this space right here you have where you don't have these hits here. You don't want it to be too quiet. It's going to be very, very obvious, you know. So there's, you know, different things. Usually it's filtering is the best way to go for something like that. Okay, so right now I'll try with something else. I have this other part right here we can listen to by itself. So I could take this piano or just the string part right here and put it in the background and see how that sounds. Let's just try it by itself with the main sample that we have. And when I do that, I try not to play the drums with it because it drowns it out, kind of. Like I'm trying to focus on just the melody, just the music part of it, the melodic part of it. So I try to take the drums out of the equation here. So let's silence. Okay, it's already silenced, already muted. So let's check it out with this piano and see how it sounds. Oh, sorry. So definitely this second part is no good. Doesn't sound good with it. I mean, yeah, I could pitch it or whatever, but I'm not going to mess with that right now. I want to focus on what works, which is this. So let's take this part right here. Try it again. So right there, I can chop it. Chop where I want. So I have 2 chops I can work with here. Now, usually what I'll do when I chop something like this is, you know, when I chop it, it doesn't mean you got to play it, you know, in the same order. Usually I'll just switch it around, right? Try something like this. All right, so that sounds pretty good. So let's just take this part, bring it over here to the second bar. Put this one over here. Let's try it now. Not too bad. What I'll probably do actually is add this to another track over here. Mute that for now. what I'm going to do is copy this one, listen to it like this. That's pretty good. That sounds good. Now with this original piano down here, let's extend it. Let's see how it sounds. So it's pretty much the same thing. It's the same kind of hit, but I could take this and put it maybe on the end of the first bar. Let's check it. Well, that's pretty good, actually. I like that. All right, so that's on the one right before. Okay, so let's put that over here then. Drag that over here. Where did I put that? 2, 3, 4. 1, 2. Right here. All right. Let's check it out. Nice. I like that because you have, I mean, I can lower this so it's not too loud here, but it's kind of the same as this track right here. It sounds like it. I mean, it's a different song I'm sampling from, but it kind of sounds the same, whatever. But it's good because I'm only putting it here and here, only 2 of them. So you still have this one and then the one over here that's, you know, in between the 2. So it doesn't sound too repetitive. Let's check it out. Very nice. I like that. So, this is pretty good, actually. I like all this. Now, there's also the string part from the part over here, but I don't think I'm going to use that. I don't think I really need that right now because you still have this background track. That's why this is so powerful to do this, to have this background track because, and it doesn't work with all samples, but this one here, it's good because it just chills in the background and it sounds like this pad string type sound. So use that, and it's like that replaces any need for some kind of string sample. So that's why it's so powerful to have that, you know. And it's one of those things where the listener hears it but they don't hear it. It's there, and like they know it's there but they don't really know it's there. Like it's because if you took it out all of a sudden in the beat, they would notice it. They wouldn't realize it at first, you know, like what just happened, but they would notice that it's gone. So, but it's good to have sounds like that. And there's many producers in the past that are notorious for doing stuff like that. You know, there's some samples they had in the background. You listen to the old Public Enemy stuff. I mean, you know, those guys, I mean, they had all kinds of sounds in their beats and, you know, just tiny little sounds, little snippets. And that's what really, you know, brought the beat together. So that's what I try to do when I mix all this together. So anyway, this is, okay, so this is what we're left with. We're left with this beat put together just from chops, okay, just from this one track right here, just from this one sample. Let's check this out. Just from that plus a bit of piano from another track, I put together this. So there you have it. It's not too difficult to work with samples when you have a sample that's really dope to begin with. That's the key here, because there's plenty of times where I've used samples that they don't sound that great, so my beat ends up not sounding that great either. So you have to find a good sample, something that really sounds good, and you work with it. All you gotta do is just chop it up. You could chop it up at the specific spots or just random spots and just play with it. And it doesn't always have to be at the beginning of a sound. So for example, when you look at this here, okay, we have this sample right here. Now, instead of this starts at the beginning. What if you chopped it, let's say here, it's like the tail end of this one part here. Let's check it out. See, right there you have a loop, you know, a simple loop put together. You don't have to chop it at the beginning of each, you know, big hit in the waveform that you see like here and here. You don't have to chop it there. You could chop it right here or whatever. And it just, you know, actually a lot of times that creates a different dynamic to the sound, right? It just changes the whole sound of what you're doing here. So don't always sample at the beginning of a big hit. You can sample wherever you want. And usually that's a good thing. So just experiment with it. And my advice is just to chop wherever the hell you want to, and then just play around with it, you know, and just be creative. find stuff that works together, add some drums, and then boom, you got a beat. So let's check it out one more time. There you go. All right, so that's it. So it doesn't matter what you're using. If you're using your DAW, if you're using an MPC, or if you're using Ableton, Push, whatever you're using, you just chop up the samples and start layering, start adding more stuff to it, and you can come up with something just like this. It's not that difficult. You just have to start chopping. All right, so go make some beats.